Good evening, everybody, and welcome into another episode of New England Sports Weekly. As always, I am your host, Sean Metcalf, and I'm glad that you've decided to join me this evening. If you're watching live on the stream, or if you're happen to be listening on the podcast version, no matter what you're doing, out working your yard work tomorrow or over the weekend, whatever it is, glad that you've decided to join me this evening. It is, as always, there's never a shortage of stories here in Boston, or in New England sports. As it is always jam packed. Some of it may not be good, but some of it may be a little kind of on the make your stomach a little queasy. But there's plenty to go around, the good, the bad, and the ugly here. And I hope you enjoyed your last week, although wasn't the most pleasurable enjoyment of watching the Patriots last week, as it was a slog watching them having to take on the Colts. And it honestly should have been more than a 26-3 win. It probably should have been somewhere in the 40s. But hopefully over the bye week, they can work on that offense and try to punch it in when they get into the red zone, because they only came away with that one touchdown over the weekend. But nonetheless, we will dive into that here in a little bit, but I hope everything's going well for everybody out there, and hope you're not suffering from the early holiday Christmas commercials out there, because that's been the one thing watching a lot of Patriots games and a lot of Celtics games lately. It's just like, let's stop on those goddamn commercials. But anyways, sorry, that was just a little bit of a rant because I saw a few of those here lately here tonight, and it was driving me nuts. Sorry, a little sidebar. But nonetheless, we will jump into our out of the box segment. And as always, it is brought to you by me. Now, remember, if you're a good sponsor out there, 47 brand, hint, hint, wear your products all the time. Maybe if you want to jump in and be a sponsor, be proud to rep some even more gear for you, some of the new stuff. Model some new Patriots or Red Sox or Bruins or Celtics gear that you have. I will shamelessly or plug for you. But nonetheless, we will jump into the out of the box segment here. As we just mentioned, the New England Patriots did take down the Indianapolis Colts 26-3 on Sunday. So they head into the bye 5-4. So it's going to be interesting to see how they come out of the bye week here, as their offense has been sputtering, to say the least, and that's being kind to the Patriots and Mac Jones. So we'll see what they're able to cook up here. And it looks as though there's been some good news coming out of Patriots camp today, as not Mark Andrews. Man, I wish they had Mark Andrews at tight end. That would be a hell of an upgrade. But nonetheless, they have David Andrews back, their veteran center and captain. So that'll be a big boost, because that'll help out Cole Strange, the rookie guard, to his left. So we'll see how that all works out here for the Patriots, but good news on that front for the Patriots, although Matthew Judon did lose out the Defensive Player of the Week to Justin Houston, who had a 2.5 sack game on Monday Night Football, which I think is a little BS, because let's just say Matthew Judon had a 3-sack game and absolutely wrecked house on Sunday, but whatever. It's just mid-season award, so he won't get too wound up about it. But he did lose out on that opportunity. And of course, the big news that broke a day after our last episode was that the Boston Bruins signed controversial 20-year-old defenseman and former Arizona Coyotes 4th-round draft pick, and that would be Mitchell Miller, who ended up getting his the situation was he got signed on Thursday. It was a big uproar, because we'll get into his past here in a little bit, and what's going to happen here and the aftershock that's happened. Well, basically, the short end of it was that Mitchell Miller got signed on Thursday, or was offered a contract by the Patriots by the Boston Bruins. And of course, over the weekend, all the controversy was swirling because of everything that he did to a disabled and African American can't not candidate. Sorry, I've got a lot of politics going on from yesterday, but a disabled and African American child in his youth from second grade all the way to eighth grade, and there's been a lot of court reports out there, but nonetheless. So that's kind of like the small snapshot of it. So there's a bunch of controversy surrounding him because the Arizona Coyotes cut him, rescinding his rights after they decided they were going to draft him in the fourth round, and then after they took a lot of heat back in 2016, they cut ties. So and then of course, I believe it was on Saturday afternoon. That's where Gary Bettman came out, the commissioner of the NHL, and said that he's not even fit to play in the NHL. So he wasn't even going to be playing for the Boston Bruins. Nevertheless, any other NHL team. So it was kind of a far off kind of pipe dream or nightmare, whatever you want to situation that you want to kind of call it at this point. So he wasn't even going to be close, but just because of the severity of what he did and was accused of, and everything that happened over those younger years of his life, he caused that uproar, and the Bruins ended up rescinding their offer on late Sunday night at 9 p.m. So go figure, the Bruins take the chicken shit way out of announcing it during the middle of Sunday night football. So, oh boy. So Cam Neely and Don Sweeney really stepped in at this time. They did have a press conference on Monday, and basically it was kind of what you expected with them, just saying we stepped in it. And I mean, they did actually come out and make an apology, unlike Mitchell Miller. At least they made a sincere one. We'll get into that a little bit more. So that was the firestorm that occurred a day after we aired. And that lasted for 4 days, and everybody was wondering how long that was going to last. So that was probably one of the wildest 4 days I've seen in Boston sports that wasn't involving an actual game in a long time. And then, of course, on the little bit of a lighter side here, the Boston Celtics are off to a 7-3 start. Jason Tatum looks like he is ramped up and ready to go, and seems as though he's on a mission not just to win an MVP award, but to get back to the NBA Finals as well. So everything is rolling for the Celtics. And we should mention, even though we talked about a little bit of negative there for the Bruins, they are off to a 11-2 start on the season, which is by far the best record in the NHL at this point in time. Is the Devils are the closest in the Eastern Conference with a 10-3 record, and in the Western Conference, the Golden Knights have a 12-2 record. So the Boston Bruins, sorry, I should have said in the best record in the East, but still the Boston Bruins are well in front of the Detroit Red Wings. They're 22 points opposed to 17 ahead of the Red Wings. So they have a nice comfy cushion there. So it's just, honestly, it has been an upside down type of season. Not that I didn't think the Bruins weren't going to be in the playoff race, but just I didn't think they were going to be off to this red hot, or not even red hot, white hot start that they are early on into the season. I thought they'd be battling for one of the last two wild card spots in the Eastern Conference. But I mean, obviously there's still a long way to go. There's 82 games, but nobody saw this start coming. So the Boston Bruins are tearing it up, and they have another game tomorrow night at home against the Calgary Flames, who are 5-2. And we'll see how that all goes for your Boston Bruins. Now, in baseball, as far as the Boston Red Sox, it is getting close to the winter meetings. And of course, everybody was wondering what was going to happen with the Boston Red Sox and Xander Bogaerts. They had a period during the postseason where they could talk and try to hammer out a contract extension or give him a new offer. But of course, Shine Bloom in his immense amount of wisdom still has dicked around with Bogaerts and has not even given him a sniff of even a reputable contract. It is just, it's ridiculous. Well, we'll touch on this here in a little bit, but it's just pissing me off. Why do you want to fuck around with Bogarts and Rafael Devers? You're two mega stars on this team, but yet you don't want to give them anything over just a penny over what you're willing to give. When it's pissing me off, and when we're not even getting to that segment, so that definitely we'll touch on that here in a little bit, but. That was just upsetting to see. No, I figured Bogarts was going to opt out of the contract, but to not even have any hint that they put together a serious offer, and we just kept hearing Heim Bloom at the winter meetings, basically just peddling that same old line that he's had about basically, oh yeah, we're working hard to get a contract for Rafael Devers and Xander Bogaerts. They're our top option. Now, obviously, Rafael Devers is still under Red Sox control for one more year, but Bogaerts, now that he's opted out, is officially a free agent. And the Red Sox also have declined to take the option on Tommy Pham, who they traded for from the Cincinnati Reds. And they did, well, I should say that Rob Refschneider and the Red Sox have agreed, or he has agreed to come back on his option. So Refschneider will be back, who was a solid bench player for them this year. So that'll be a nice pickup. And then James Paxton, who was out all year after trying to rehab from Tommy John, he picked up his 1 year, $4 million option, which actually that ends up costing the Red Sox less, because even though if he declined his option because of how things would have worked, it would have cost them $7 million. A lot of that kind of financial gymnastics for them. So we'll see how that all goes here for the Red Sox. But again, not a lot of positive news. I mean, James Paxton is a good one, but again, he's injury prone, but still it'll be interesting to see how things kind of shape up here for the Boston Red Sox over the winter meetings and see if they can get a deal done with Bogarts and see if they can get a long-term extension done with Rafael Devers, and then from there try to fill the rest of their holes that they have in this team and try to get back into that playoff conversation, one of those wild card spots. It was an absolute disaster of a season this year. All right, as we dive right into our main course here, as we mentioned off the top of the show, the New England Patriots took down the Indianapolis Colts 26-3. And if you just looked at that box score, you'd be pretty happy with that. A 26-3 big that would constitute a drubbing of the Colts. But if you really kind of sit there and really look at it, it was not a pretty win at all, because at least from the offensive side. Now, the defense, they came to play in this game as Matthew Judon, Josh Uche, both had 3 sacks apiece. And that defensive front seven was just causing havoc all day long for Sam Ehlinger in that Colts offense. Man, do I feel, in a side note, do I really feel bad for Michael Pittman in this situation, who's had this is his 3rd year now. And this is a guy that I really wanted the Patriots to take back in the 2020 draft out of USC. He was there in the 2nd round, but he went to Indy. He's had a couple 1,000-yard seasons between Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz. So he's got talent if he can put up some numbers with the bones of Phillip Rivers. Obviously, Phillip Rivers in his heyday would put massive numbers up with Pittman, and then you had to deal with Carson Wentz last year, and then now you're just dealing with another zombified corpse here of Matt Ryan, who was traded from the Atlanta Falcons in the offseason. So just actually, you've got to feel bad for Michael Pittman, who's a very young, talented wide receiver. And I would, if I'm Michael Pittman, I would be trying to get my ass out of Indy as soon as I could. So but he wasn't much of a factor, just from the standpoint that he had no quarterback to get him the ball. So the Patriots defense came up to play, and they really put the clamps down on that offense. And obviously they didn't have their star running back in Jonathan Taylor, who was out, and they had to rely on Deion Jackson. But even if they had Jonathan Taylor, it still wouldn't have been enough. Maybe they put a little bit of a puncher's chance, but that defense was just all over the Colts last weekend. So that was the part that you felt good about. And honestly, they should have done that to the Colts just because it's Sam Ehlinger, who is basically at this point a rookie quarterback who was taken in the 6th round of the 2021 draft and didn't play at all last year. And he looked like a deer in the headlights last week and threw a couple picks. So the Patriots defense did come to play, and I'm not that I have no problem with in that Patriots defense. Yeah, they have a few things to work on here and there, but I'm not as worried about them moving forward as I am about this Patriots offense, which looks broken right now. Anybody outside of Ramondre Stevenson just has been lackluster, performing under par. It's been putrid to watch. It just really has. As much as I stick up for Mac Jones, as much as I love Mac Jones, you can't, I don't know how much longer you can just blame him dealing with that high ankle sprain and that injury. But there's a lot of blame to go around here, though. So I'm not one of those people that everything, the offensive line problems is Mac's fault. The receivers dropping balls and fumbling and having bad turnovers are his fault. It's a whole shit pie that the Patriots have on offense right now, and everybody has a slice of theirs to go around for as far as the blame goes. And but it really, really is not ideal what's going on right now. And to me, Mac Jones isn't the biggest worry. I mean, we'll get into him here in a second, but it's the offensive line. And I mean, this is an offensive line last year that were they the best offensive line in football? No, but they were a solid offensive line. They really are only missing a couple, like they only lost one free agent in this situation. And that was Ted Karras, who they lost. Now they're down to James Ferentz as the backup. So at center, but it's really been an up and down year for guys like Trent Brown, Michael Onwenu, and of course, Isaiah Wynn, who's been in and out of the lineup, who was a first-round pick in 2018 out of Georgia and just has not lived up to his first-round billing. He's had a couple of good years, but he really hasn't taken off what you think a first-round tackle would be. So, and there's been some shuffling there. And the last couple of weeks, Cole Strange, the Patriots' first-round pick out of Tennessee Chattanooga this year, just as the last couple of games, he's kind of fallen off from where he was. And of course, some of that might have to do with missing David Andrews, who was out with a concussion, who we mentioned is back starting today. So that's a good sign to have him back in the lineup. But honestly, though, it's been a merry-go-round when it comes to that line as far as people staying in one spot outside of David Andrews and Cole Strange. So it's been so up and down with this offensive line. This has to be the worst offensive line they've had in a long time here in New England. So that obviously goes a long way in bringing down the production of Mac Jones, because as much crap as people want to give Mac Jones as far as his inabilities this year, that's really, really had to speed up his decision-making and force him into some bad situations when your offensive line can't give you time to look down the field for your second, third, fourth options. So what do you expect if your offensive line isn't protecting you? You're going to have some bad games if you're at quarterback. I don't care if you're Tom Brady, Rodgers, Mahomes, Justin Herbert, whoever you are. If you don't have, unless you're obviously Lamar Jackson, or you're one of these scrambling quarterbacks or running quarterbacks that you can get out of the pocket and get some yards with your legs. I mean, Mac has done that a few times this year, but it's not obviously to the extent that a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson can do it, obviously. But still, it's a lot to kind of put on Mac Jones's plate when his biggest strength is his pre-reads, his pre-snap reads that he has. It's his brain that's his biggest asset out there on the field, because he's not the worst athlete out there, but he's not going to be the best out there. So it's all just, and don't take this the wrong way, but kind of like what a Tom Brady type of brain, as far as like every Tom Brady, the Mahomes, the Mannings, the Justin Herbert's, the ones that can go out there and find that weakness before the ball's even snapped. But when your offensive line gives you 2 seconds or less, and somebody's breathing right down your neck, an outside pass rusher, or you get that blitz right up the middle, and Cole Strange is whiffing on a guy, then what do you expect? So that's just been the frustrating part. But of course, the other frustration that we saw this week is just there was nothing really tantalizing going on in the passing game, as far as there really Jacoby Myers was probably the best receiver that they had all day. But again, as much as I love Jacoby, he should be your, at best, your second best wide receiver on the team. He is your classic possession receiver. I love him. I always want him on this team, but he shouldn't be your number one wide receiver. I'm just trying to think of like Anquan Bolden was like really the last number one type of possession receiver that I could really think of. I'm sure there's other guys out there that if you brought him up, I could think of. I mean, maybe a Kelvin Benjamin in his first couple of years before he ate his way out of the league, figuratively and literally. But I mean, you really, possession receivers are great to have, and you always want at least one of them on the roster, so that if you need to move the change, you can. But the Patriots just don't have any explosion, and we saw that again against the Colts, where there were opportunities in that second half to take advantage of it, and there's just nothing there, nothing open. And I was hoping at this point with Tyquan Thornton, who we saw in that Cleveland game, have, I won't call it a breakout, but that was his coming out party there, as far as in Cleveland with the 2 touchdowns, took that 37-yard jet sweep into the end zone, and then it caught a 21-yard pass for a touchdown. And you saw the speed and in the juke moves that he could make. So I'm just a little disappointed that this offense hasn't taken advantage of it, of his athletic ability and his speed and just his hands and his route running. And I think this kind of goes back to a point that I've been harping on all year. And I know I'm beating this dead horse into a pulp here, but for crying out loud, Matt Patricia sucks. Just absolutely sucks. He wants to stay with just that 5-man protection with the offensive line, and there's really been no kind of disguising it, and just tried with a lot of those 50-50 balls, instead of going with the strength of Mac Jones, where Mac Jones is great at getting the ball out quick and then is great at that play action game as well. Instead of playing to his strength, Mac Patricia just keeps banging his head against the wall, it seems like every week, as far as the passing game. Yes, it hasn't been the complete utter disaster that I thought it was going to be this year with him. Not completely, because you've gotten, obviously, Ramondre Stevenson, who we all thought was going to be a stud, has stepped up and been a stud this year. And we've seen a few games here and there from this passing attack where you're like, okay, there's something there. Like that Baltimore game, they were able to move the ball down the field in chunks, and it wasn't just 50-50 balls. But it just seems like Matt Patricia all season long goes with those 50-50 balls instead of going to the strengths, trying to get those quick passes, those 5-yard slants, those 10-yard posts, those quicker routes, some of the simpler routes, maybe just to get a little bit of the offense going. And it's just frustrating. And I mean, the way that the Raiders are playing right now, Josh McDaniels might be fired. So at least you might have an offensive coordinator next year when Josh comes knocking on the door again, asking for his job back. And if I was Bill, I'd take that in a heartbeat. So we'll see how that all goes here for the Patriots. But I'm just so frustrated with just how inept this offense looks, and just the unwillingness for Matt Patricia to kind of go with what works and really kind of whittle things down. Why don't you do the things that you did when Bailey Zappi was starting? Yes, I know you want to try to be a little bit more exotic with Mac, which I'm fine. I want them to kind of open up the playbook, but with how the offense is looking, how about you get some of those quick plays, get some of those plays that have been working in this offense to move the goddamn ball down the field. And then once Mac has his confidence restored, because let's be honest, as much of a Mac Jones fan as I am, his confidence looks shot out there right now. The first couple of games back from his injury, especially in that Jets game after he threw that pick in the Monday night game against the Bears, he had that pick that was called back right at the end of halftime in the Jets game 2 weeks ago, and he didn't look gun shy, but there were some uncomfortable moments there, and he just doesn't look the same. So this is just where, if you're Matt Patricia, you're Bill Belichick, you have to give him some of the more simple plays. You got to scheme things up to get him comfortable, throw some screens, get some good play action plays. Don't throw some of the shitty play action plays that I've seen over this last couple of weeks. It's like, oh, well, just because the one against Indianapolis really had nothing down the field and just had to kind of check down to Ramondre Stevenson, which, I mean, I'm not mad that he checked down and he caught it and got some yardage out of it. But if you're going to call that play action, how about we have some better play action calls that are going to work down the field? Let's maybe put Tyquan Thornton in there, who's got speed to burn. And I don't know, maybe, just maybe, since we're 9 weeks through, and remember there's 18 weeks now, 18 games, that let's 17 games. Let's put, I don't know, friggin' Kendrick Bourne. Let's get him out of the doghouse, put him into a game, a receiver that actually has some ability out other than Jacoby Myers, because right now it's just Jacoby Myers dragging the rest of this pass catching squad, kicking and screaming down the field, because every time you throw it to Nelson Aguilar, who's kind of been whitewashed out of his offense right now, is every time he catches a ball, he ends up fumbling it away. And I mean, outside of that, for some reason you have Kendrick Bourne in the doghouse. You showcased Tyquan Thornton in the Cleveland game, and you really haven't gone back to him enough to see what he has. So what are we doing? So in going into the second half of the season, I really want them to showcase what they have in Tyquan Thornton, really try to get the ball into his hands. I know he's a rookie. Yes, he's going to make a few mistakes. But at this point, you need to see what you have in a playmaker in Thornton. And for the love of God, put Kendrick Bourne out on the field and put him in positions to succeed. The guy had 800 yards, a career high last year. I know in the day and age of 1,000 yards, wide receivers just growing on trees, 800 yards is something you'll just kind of look away and just look at pedestrian out. But that was a breakout year for him. And he put that up in, I believe, in like a 13 game span. So he really didn't have much going on early in the season. And then at least in the first like 3 weeks, and then he took off like a rocket last year. So why not get him more involved? We know he has the ability, the skill and ability there. And we know we have the all-dependable Jacoby Myers, and try to get. And then the other thing is, why don't we get some of those tight ends involved? You have a decent skill position group. Yeah, do we have a Justin Jefferson, a Jamar Chase? Do we have a guy like that? Do we have a Cooper Kupp? No, we don't have one of those guys. There's nobody like that that's out there on the field and putting up video game numbers. No, but you have a solid group, and for some reason, there's Matt Patricia stuck in the mud. So why not? I'd love to see in the second half them get their playmakers involved. And in turn, if you get those playmakers involved, I guarantee you Mac's confidence is going to go up, because those guys have the ability to do it. But for some reason, they're just not getting that done. And I don't. Do I think Mac is ultimately screwed in this situation? Do I think he's beyond repairable? No, I don't think he's beyond repair. Again, this comes back to, you have to simplify things, not because Mac can't handle the complicated. He can, But I just think because of dealing with the ankle injury, him throwing the amount of picks that he has this year, you just can see he's not as confident when he goes out there. And this is a guy that people, for some reason, want to just sit there and forget what happened back in last year in his rookie year, where he had a historical rookie campaign for the Patriots, where he threw for close to 4,000 yards, had 3,800 and some odd yards, had 22 touchdowns, had the 11 picks, and looked very confident last year, carried himself. And I know people will poo-poo the swagger and the confidence, but I mean, that goes a long way. And we just haven't seen that for Mac this year. And he really needs to get that back and get back into that right spot in his head, so that when he steps out on the field, this is a guy that means business and that's gonna be able to lead you down the field when you need him most. So again, I hate to repeat myself and harp on it, but it really is true that they need to simplify things. They need to put Mac in the best spot, get some of those simple plays going, and then once you've proven that, okay, this offense is able to make those plays, then let's turn up the heat here, and let's try to get some more of those exotic plays, if you will, going, and maybe throwing some trick plays in there, and let's use some play action. So I know it's redundant, but they really have to get back to that, and because that's something that they excelled at last year. Maybe you have to go back to that. So it's something that they can fix. Mac, he's not beyond repair. So he's still very capable of being your franchise quarterback. I know people were all hot and bothered for Bailey Zappi there for a couple weeks while he was winning games for the Patriots. And I'm not saying that sometime in the future that he couldn't, but I mean, I have more faith in Mac than I do in Bailey Zappi, because Bailey Zappi came in as a 4th-round draft pick out of Western Kentucky. And yeah, he broke a lot of those NCAA records, but again, that's a Division I AA. He wasn't at any Power 5 school. And I definitely want him on my team, because now he showed he's a capable NFL quarterback that can go out there and make the plays. But we saw what happened in the Chicago game. He did get exposed. So it's not like he's the second coming of Brady, but let's just pump the brakes on that. So I think in this bye week, now that they have 2 weeks here until they have to face the Jets at home this time, that you have a lot to work on offensively. We already went over what the offense needs to do, and defensively they kind of need to keep going with what they have. As far as everything's really worked well with Matthew Judon and Dietrich Wise, who's been a breakout in his 6th year. So that was a long time coming, but he's really looked pretty well to pair with Judon on the other side. And Josh Uche lately has flashed, had the 3 sacks against the Colts. And Jawan Bentley has been solid, hasn't been, I'm not like a Fred Warner or anything out there defensively, but the Patriots front 7, anchored by Matthew Judon and Dietrich Wise and Uche, have really been a really good front 7. Matthew Judon's is probably, if not the front runner, at least in the top 3 for defensive players of the year in the NFL right now. And surprisingly, those rookie corners in Jack Jones and in not Jonathan Jones, because he's the long-term star there, but you have Jack Jones and Marcus Jones that are out there, and they're playing very well to start the year. And I love what Jack Jones has done out there. He came in with no fear against Aaron Rodgers, had a pick 6 against Rodgers. He had another one against the Jets against Zach Wilson, but I mean, Zach Wilson was handing him out like Halloween candy the other weekend. So, and that really wasn't anything special, I guess, but still, Jack Jones, they might have found the replacement for JC Jackson. So that's very exciting there. Of course, there are things to work on. They still could use some help at the linebacker position. I'm still going to be curious to see when they go up against the elite of the elite receivers, when they have to face Stephon Diggs on December 1st, and then to end the season in against Buffalo, excuse me. And of course, you have to face, in my opinion, either the best or second best at worst receiver, with just because it's either Justin Jefferson or Cooper Kupp right now are the best receivers in the league. So coming off the bye, I mean, in 2 weeks on Thanksgiving night, they play the Minnesota Vikings for that Sunday for the Thanksgiving night game, and they have to face arguably at worst the second best receiver in football, and Justin Jefferson is a beast. So he can tear you a new one if you're not careful. So that's going to be interesting to see how they handle a top tier guys like Diggs and Jefferson. And then they have to face, if Jamar Chase is healthy by the time they play the Bengals, they have to face Jamar Chase. So this isn't going to get this isn't going to get any easier heading down the stretch here for the Patriots. So we'll see how this all shapes up for your Patriots down the stretch. But again, defensively, there's a lot less that I'm worried about. Again, it's how they're gonna do against the Buffaloes, against the high-powered offenses, which that the last couple of years have really given them some fits because they've been able to feast on these lower-level teams. And of course, the other part there is trying to improve on playing against these running quarterbacks because you have 2 games coming up against Josh Allen. So it's really, for me, that the 2 big things are how are they going to lock down some of these high-powered wide receivers, and how are they going to lock down Josh Allen, who's really given them fits as far as with being able to use his legs and just absolutely tear him open like a tin can. But for the most part, the Patriots defense is the least of my worries. This is the part of the team that is carrying them on their back right now. And just quickly, special team wise, Nick Folk is absolute nails out there. He might be up there in age, but man, he is just as solid can be. And he's just automatic. He basically has been like what Vinatieri and Stephen Gostkowski were for most of their careers here in New England. Just hasn't had the opportunity to hit the big kicks at this point in the postseason. And the only disappointment is Jake Bailey, who was an all-pro punter this year, has had his worst season. His last punt against the Colts was a 7-yard punt, so it was just ugly the last couple of games there for Jake Bailey, who they signed to an extension. So we'll see if he lasts any much longer. But the Patriots do have a few things to look forward here to, and we won't get into the second Jets game this week just because it's the bye week. We'll have that to break down and look forward to next Wednesday on the podcast. And we'll obviously talk about anything else that pops up there with the Patriots. But we'll turn our attention here to the signing of defenseman Mitchell Miller, who we talked about off the top of the show. And for those of you who just need a little bit of a refresher course, Mitchell Miller is the defenseman that was drafted out of South Dakota, the University of South Dakota, by the Arizona Coyotes in the 4th round of the 2016 NHL draft. And he's a talented young defenseman. Of course, he's more on the offensive side of things, but the reason that he's controversial is that he, from 2nd grade to 8th grade, he verbally and physically abused a mentally disabled and African-American classmate of his. He did some despicable things. He took candy, ran it through a toilet, made him lick and eat candy on multiple occasions in that manner. Like I said, he would verbally and physically abuse this poor child. He would repeatedly call him the N-word. And I mean, the list goes on and on as far as just the abuses, as far as that he committed from 2nd grade to 8th grade. And on top of that situation, he was charged and taken to juvenile court, and even the court magistrate, after basically those charges were filed and they went over everything in the court, even the magistrate said that he did not show any remorse. And in interviews with the Coyotes and interviews with 10 other NHL teams at the time, he showed no sign of remorse, no sign of just decency at all as far as towards the situation. And in turn, what happened is that the Arizona Coyotes, because of all of these, well, not just even allegations, but since there's actual court documents that prove everything, that he was abusive and just viral and racist and just an awful human being towards somebody that does not deserve any of this type of negative attention. It just sickens me that somebody like that somebody never stepped in to stop Mitchell Miller over the years. It's just it's sad for the child, for the victim here as well, just because he's mentally disabled. He's and physically as well, in a wheelchair, and you're picking on somebody that can't fight back. It's just ugly and ugly and ugly. And of course, the Coyotes, like I said, they cut bait with him. So for 4 years or what, 6 years or whatever now, because he's 20 years old, he's still trying to get back in the NHL. And then the Bruins came to him because obviously they are try to add some depth to their minor league system because they haven't drafted well and even and just leaving the heinous things that he's done off to the side. Mitch Miller he might have been a 4th-round talent, but he does have some talent there. Like I said, the offensive defenseman, and then could have helped the Bruins down the road, but it's just they stepped in it big time. Because if you just heard any of the New England area sports radio, you read any of the any articles in the paper or online, or any online publications that you pulled up, the Bruins absolutely stepped in it because fans were angry and pissed off. You had all kinds of people that have mental and physically disabled children that are diehard Bruins fans. I heard from a bunch of them, as far as not personally, but just listening to like sports talk radio and listening and just reading things, that it just is just major heartbreak for him, just because it's like these kids look up to the Bruins, and how are these parents going to break the news to their children who have these type of disabilities, that look up to this organization that brought in somebody that just doesn't not value, but just doesn't respect the life of a mentally and physically disabled child. So it was just so sad to just hear that this situation happened. And of course, like, they finally, Sunday night at 9 p.m. in the middle of Sunday Night Football, so of course in a news dump, they ended up cutting ties, rescinding the contract offer from Mitchell Miller. So he is no longer, so it's more complicated than just rescinding it. So they rescinded the contract offer, but still he's going to be technically on their payroll. So, and then it sounds like the NHLPA is still going to at least try to step in and help him out here a little bit. But they did rescind it, but it was just a mess. And the thing was, Saturday night, you had out of all people, you had Gary Bettman have to come out and say that the NHL hasn't approved him to be in the league. He's not allowed to play hockey at this time of the NHL. So that pretty much was the red flag there, that the Bruins didn't even consult the NHL, because the part that just blows me away with this whole thing with Mitchell Miller, the Bruins are so obtuse that they thought this was one incident. I can go on Google right now and I can find multiple articles from all different sources. Hell, if you can even look at his Wikipedia page for Mitchell Miller, and it has this on there. So how the hell did Don Sweeney and Cam Neely, how were they so goddamn lazy that they didn't even search, even do an online search? They're the friggin' Boston Bruins. You have resources beyond some peon like me that can just click on his phone, that can go into his iPhone and search for shit. You have all kinds of other NHL resources that you can investigate, that you know of. So you have way better resources that can look into this than I do. But yet you said this is one incident, and it's not. It was years upon years of this. And the even worse part was today, Isaiah Meyer Crothers, who was the child that was picked on and abused by Mitchell Miller over this whole situation. Because remember, if you remember a couple, what back to Thursday or Friday, you had Mitchell Miller come out and he quote unquote apologized over social media on Instagram and said this was not about hockey, which that's a bunch of bullshit. We all know that the only reason he came out and apologized 10 days ago is because that was when the Bruins approached him about signing him. So we all know that that was just a load of shit. But of course, in the statement, he said we're friends. That Mitchell Miller was saying that they are friends now. But the sad part about this is that today, that Isaiah Myers Crothers did come out and through sources of his own, or not sources, but basically people that were helping him out in this situation, did release a statement. And give me just a second here, and I will pull that up here for you. Okay, so these were in his own words. This was Isaiah's own words. And he said, I am Isaiah Meyer Crothers. I would like to make a statement. I have been bullied since I was in first grade. There were not many black kids at my school. I was called Brownie, the N-word. Kids said my black mom and dad didn't love me. That's why I had white parents. Mitchell used to ask me to sit with him on the bus, and then he and his friends would punch me in the head. This happened my whole time in school. When I went to junior high, Mitchell would spit in my face and call me a N-word. I stopped telling because they called me a snitch and get made fun of. I had to stop telling because they called me. I had to say I was his N-word to sit at the table, and he made me clean the whole table. He threw food in my face. I was called N-word every day. The office would tell me to stay away from him because he wasn't my friend. Once he got expelled from school, his friends started bullying me. He pretended to be my friend and made me do things I didn't want to do. In junior high, I got beat up by him. Everyone thought he was cool, but I didn't see how someone could be cool when you pick on someone and bully someone your entire life. middle of October, I was being texted constantly every day till I answered a Snapchat and Instagram message from Mitchell Miller. He asked me why I always have my parents doing stuff for me. Why can't I speak for myself? I told him I don't care what my parents say. I'm old enough to speak for myself. He told me he was sorry and that that the apology didn't involve hockey. He told me he was doing stuff in the community and helping the youth and wanted to be my friend. I told him that's all cool, but where is the proof though? He didn't give me any proof. And the lies I have been told from him for so many years, I don't believe that Mitchell told me. He kept asking me to be his friend and that he changed over the years from what he did. I told him, I'm not just going to be your friend after all you told me. I am now getting messages on social media from people calling me a slow. All right, I'm going to leave out some language there because I don't want this taken off of YouTube or taken down, but just go out and you can find the quote on some of this information here. Mitchell isn't, and then the important part here at the end is that it says, Mitchell isn't my friend. It hurts my heart when what he did to me. So I just wanted to tell everyone when Mitchell says we're friends, it isn't true. I can't take any more of this. So, I mean that is very sad to hear that Isaiah had to go through all that, and of course that Mitchell Miller. We all kind of knew that. Like I said, that Instagram apology was a bunch of BS that he released the other day about him. Obviously, he apologized. I'm not saying that's the BS part, but as far as the sincerity of it and saying that they're friends, that's the part that we all kind of knew that was the BS part. So it's just sad that Isaiah had to come out and even release a statement. So it was very sad, and I feel bad for the kid because you shouldn't have to relive some of this type of crap. But good for him to at least kind of go out there and release a statement. And it was, and for me, the part that just kind of made me blow my mind, like I said, is that Don Sweeney and the organization didn't even kind of do their homework on this situation, and they had to come out and they did, and you could tell it felt like Patrice Bergeron, their captain, their 20-year Hall of Fame legend, basically had to feel like he was in a hostage video when they asked him about it. And Nick Foligno, everybody was basically against it. And Patrice Bergeron, it felt like if he in his quote, he said, if this is the same 14-year-old that's coming into our locker room, he's not welcomed. So you didn't even consult your best players. Or if you did, it was a half-ass consultant job on that one. Oh my God. It's just infuriating. It's like, what were you thinking? It's not like this was Wayne Gretzky or Bobby Orr, Ray Bourque or Mark Messier or any legend, Mario Lemieux, that you were going to bring into the organization that had some problems where, let's be honest, we probably would have been willing to sweep some of that under the rug. Would have been fair? Probably not. But still, we're talking about a kid that was a 4th-round draft pick that hasn't proven a lot, and you were going to gamble on that? You were going to gamble on an unproven commodity? Now, listen, does he probably deserve a second chance in life? Yes. I'm not saying he doesn't. Everybody deserves one. Just how well they were rolling in this situation. The Bruins are 11-2, and you don't want, and you're willing to upset the apple cart over a 4th-round draft pick that hasn't played he's played in the USHL, but for a kid that's had all these problems in his past and still to this day has only faked remorse and not great at it either. So it's just boggles my mind that they were even willing to go to even do that. So luckily the Bruins, are a veteran-laden team, so it's not like this is going to be a young core that I think this is going to shake up or destroy. So the Bruins have gotten past it. They're 11-2. They won their last game, so they look like they're still maybe just that one night in Toronto. It might have shaken them, but it looks like they're back on track here the last game, and they have a game against Calgary tomorrow. So I don't think this is going to be any long-term ramifications. But as far as with this team, I think it's going to be more the ramifications are going to come from the community where everybody kind of already wanted Don Sweeney to kind of to get fired after the way he handled the Bruce Cassidy situation and handle some of the signings that they've had. Although we were all kind of looking for maybe Don Sweeney to look for a mea culpa after everybody was looking to kick him out of town now that he has an 11-2 team. So all that goodwill that he had built up after that hot start kind of got quickly washed away after the whole situation. But again, I think they'll be able to, they're a veteran team. They'll be able to move on from this. It was just kind of an unfortunate situation. Now, as we roll on into the offseason here for the Boston Red Sox, after it is officially the start of free agency tomorrow, because the World Series ended with a Houston Astros victory over the Philadelphia Phillies last week, is the offseason is quickly approaching, and the winter meetings were held in Las Vegas today and will be held over this weekend as well. And of course, the super agent Scott Boras, all the front offices are out there, even some players. But it's just been so frustrating to see what's kind of happened, where we got these hollow promises from Chaim Bloom that they were going to try and extend Xander Bogaerts and work hard to extend Rafael Devers. Now, obviously, nothing's come to this point. We had like a tweet battle between different beat writers that cover the Red Sox nationally and internationally, that when Rafael Devers was down in the Dominican Republic for his birthday, there were reports that the Red Sox were working on an extension there, but then there were dueling reports basically saying that it was that the Red Sox international scout that works down in in Latin America, down in the Dominican region, basically was kind of just passing on like a happy birthday and just checking up on Rafi down there. So nothing's come to that. And of course, the not so surprising, but still gut punching news is that Xander Bogaerts is opted out of his final year of his contract with the Boston Red Sox, or final 2 years of his contract with the Red Sox. And he's officially now a free agent. So he's going to join a jam-packed free agent class with Dansby Swanson, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, and him as well. And that's just the shortstops, because remember, you have Aaron Judge and Jacob deGrom. So this is a jam-packed free agent class. But, and not to say the Red Sox can't go back and sign him, but just Chaim Bloom, it just seems like his promises are so empty to this point. And it's so frustrating, because what the hell are we doing? Are we going to compete for another goddamn World Series with Chaim Bloom behind the helm? It sure as hell doesn't feel like it, because it feels like Chaim Bloom is just here to pick through the trash and find more guys like Schreiber. And don't get me wrong, Schreiber was good last year, but for every Schreiber and Garrett Whitlock that he's found that have been absolute studs, we can count on the amount of times that he's had guys like, you had Strom, who had an up and down year. And then you've had other guys in that bullpen that have absolutely gotten shelled. They went through a bunch of different guys this year. I can't count the amount of guys that they've had that it just ended up getting shelled. And then his outfield has been just atrocious, because you've had to rely on guys like Franchi Cordero. And then you had Jackie Bradley Jr., who, I love Jackie Bradley's glove, but he just can't hit for a lick unless it's like a 1 month stretch during the year. And then after that, he's absolutely useless with the bat. You traded away your one power bat you had in the outfield in Hunter Renfroe to the Brewers. And yes, I know you got it to get Alex Benellis, who's down with Portland, but still, I mean, you could have used Hunter Renfroe, who hit over 30 home runs again with the Milwaukee Brewers. So you traded away a perfectly good bat to get. And yes, I know Renfroe isn't an average hitter. He hits power, but that's exactly what the Red Sox need. And yes, I know you have some promising prospects, but what the hell good are prospects right now when they're not going to be ready for 4 years? This is fucking Boston. They're in the top 3 in payroll spending there with the Dodgers and the Yankees. At least the Dodgers and the Yankees had the 2 best records in their respective leagues. They had something to show for it. Where we're sitting at home with our thumb up our ass watching the Astros and the Yankees in the American League Championship Series, and that gave me heartburn having to watch that goddamn series. But no, everything's fine. We're gonna dive through dumpsters all off season looking for the next hidden gem. When, oh my God, look right there. Oh, we could go have Aaron Judge or Jacob deGrom. We could actually go buy a bunch of studs out there. But oh, God forbid we ever spend any fucking money on this goddamn team. Holy shit, are we ever? Can we get Dave Dombrowski back? I'm sorry for any bad things I ever said about you, Dave Dombrowski. Can you please come back? Because you know what? Xander Bogaerts never would have opted out of the contract, because guess what? You probably would have given him a 28 million a year for what? For 175 to 200 million dollars. So yeah, I think we would have probably had Xander Bogaerts back in the fold. Rafael Devers, who Dave Dombrowski loves and every Red Sox fan loves him, he would probably be signed up for the Bryce Harper contract for 12 years for 345. So, my God, can we have Dave back? Because I'm sick and tired of having to wade through. Yes, and I know that Chaim Bloom went out and then he got Trevor Story, but you know what? You should be able to keep Trevor Story at second, and you should still be able to have Xander Bogaerts and Rafael Devers manning the left side of the infield. But my God, it just seems like Chaim Bloom is more worried about diving in everybody's trash to find that one guy that's really gonna make it, because that he was more heartbroken that he didn't get Holmes, the closer for the Yankees, Clay Holmes. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, I was blanking right there. Oh boy. But right, so we all know that he was blanking, that he wasn't the one that got Holmes, that he was the one that didn't get that hidden gem. Okay, so you didn't get him, but guess what? You have all the money because you are one of the richest franchises in baseball, but you want to penny pinch. This is what's going to piss me off this offseason. You know what's probably going to happen this offseason? We're not going to have the old school off seasons that even Theo Epstein would go out there and sign guys. This isn't going to be the Dan Duquette signing Emmanuel Ramirez, going and trading for Pedro Martinez, because God forbid Chaim Bloom ever wants to trade one of his precious fucking prospects from the minor leagues. And yes, I know. I know there are guys that you don't want to trade. Like, I don't want to trade Cassis, and I don't want to trade Marcelo Meyer unless they land me a guy like Juan Soto. Then yes, then bring him to me or trade him away. But God forbid he trades one of his precious prospects out of the minor leagues to go get help. Just imagine if Dan Duquette never did that for Pedro Martinez. If he held on, yes, I know Carl Pavano had a decent career, but let's see. Let's have arguably the greatest right-handed pitcher of all time, or if not at worst, the third best with Roger Clemens and Bob Gibson. But let's not trade one of the absolute legend. Let's not trade for one of the absolute legends in the game, because God forbid we don't want to give up Carlo Pavano and Tony Armas Jr., for Christ's sake. Or if they were the Red Sox and they didn't go out and trade for Curt Schilling, where you didn't go out and trade the prospects. Yes, and I know there were ones that worked out, like you didn't trade away John Lester to the Texas Rangers in the A-Rod trade. I get there are ones that you do win, but sometimes you have to take that chance and you have to go out and get that megastar. And the list goes on, like getting Josh Beckett. Yeah, they had to trade away Hanley Ramirez, but guess what? Josh Beckett was an absolute stud in 2007, and he was the big reason why you ended up coming back against the Indians down 3-1 to win that and go on to win a World Series. So it's going to have to hurt you either financially or giving up these prospects to bring in proven stars and to fill those holes. But you just have to play the game of keeping those young studs in the minor leagues. Like Dave Dombrowski gets shit on all the time for not bringing in the right people, or I mean, trading away his whole farm system. But guess what? The guys he traded away really haven't amounted to much. Yes, Yohan Moncada and Kopech have been okay with the White Sox, but they haven't been the same thing. You know who he refused to trade? Rafael Devers. And what has Rafael Devers done? He's become one of the top 10 players in baseball, for Christ's sake. And so Chaim Bloom wants to sit over here with his thumb up his butt, just trying to dig for all the hidden gems, and he's just not willing to go out and other than Trevor Story. When, let's see, we could have had, I don't know, maybe Kyle Schwarber could have come back. He was second in the NL in home runs to his teammate in Bryce Harper. We could have had him. That would have bolstered the offense. Maybe we could have had some good long-term pitching instead of diving in the dumpster. Maybe we could have signed Carlos Rendon. I mean, they have a chance to this offseason, but maybe you could have signed Carlos Rendon to like a 3-4 year deal. He would still be here. And you'd have a nice guy to put at the top of the rotation. Maybe Red Sox fans would have a legitimate pipe dream in getting Jacob deGrom, the best pitcher in baseball. But no, we're just got a penny pinch. God forbid the Red Sox ever go back to being the fucking Red Sox and spend money. This offseason is going to frustrate me because you know what's going to happen? They're going to be one of those teams that has a flurry of signings, but you know who it's going to be? It's going to be that 4A player. Those guys that, they can come up, be a bench guy or be a spot starter in the infield or in the outfield, but they're going to spend time down in Worcester, or you're going to get just like you're going to throw, instead of spending $60 million on like a proven closer, you're going to spread out that money on 4 different relievers. And then instead of signing a Rendon or, God forbid, going after a Jacob deGrom, you're going to go spread that out through 3 starters that are going to be mediocre at best. And we're going to try to go with the Tampa Bay way. No, let's go with the Red Sox, the old school Red Sox way of, you know what? We can still draft and develop like Theo did and like Dombrowski did. Like, guess what? If we know we have a need on the major league roster, we're not going to stop at any expense and go out and spend for it. So I just feel like I'm going to be so disappointed. I'm going to be so excited because of the free agency class and some of the trades that are going to be out there. But you know what's going to happen? We're going to sit here on the sidelines once again with our thumb up our ass, complaining that all the other teams got those players. And we're going to finish 5th again. And we're not even going to have a May and June like we did last year to even give us false hope. It's just, we're going to be the friggin' Orioles again because Chaim Bloom doesn't want to spend or trade away people. I don't get it. What the hell did John Henry see in Chaim Bloom? Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. You got swindled. And it just pisses me off. Pisses me off. So I love baseball. And we're going to get another shit product. And they're going to try to cram all these excuses down our throat after Bogarts goes and signs with probably the Philadelphia Phillies because they need the shortstop after they let Segura go. So I'm going to have to suffer through watching Xander Bogaerts in a Phillies uniform because Chaim Bloom doesn't want to bring people in here that have succeeded and that love this town. And you just want to give them the finger out the door because you don't want to spend one penny over what you believe. You don't want to overpay for people that could be here, but God forbid we go out and we sign like a Dansby Swanson or a Carlos Correa, which I think Bogarts is better than those two guys. And the only one that I would take that Trey Turner would be the only exciting one, but it's like Trey Turner has the speed and the defense, but Bogarts to me is a better middle of the order bat than really any of those guys. But but Chaim Bloom's willing to play hardball with this guy. Let's stop it. Stop the nonsense and sign him. And instead of just telling Red Sox fans and to our face with and trying to smile and grin and be like, no, we're going to do what's best. Our number one priority is to sign Bogarts and Devers. How about you put your money where your mouth is? And then maybe I'll shut up about you and maybe I'll believe in you for once. But until that happens, I have zero confidence in Chaim Bloom in getting this team back to being a true contender. Yeah, so it's just going to be it's just going to be a lazy offseason, folks. Nothing to see here. Not that my blood pressure won't get worked up again over the offseason or anything, but man, I'm going to be so pissed off if they don't do anything on the Bogarts or Devers front here and show that they're willing to pay guys that should still be here. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say anymore. It's so frustrating. But let's try to be a little happier here. Let's try to make you a little bit of money this weekend, as there are a few different games on the slate that are interesting as we dive into our one big bet segment this week. And looking at the the NFL this weekend, of course, you have the one interesting game is the Seahawks and Buccaneers game. That's definitely intriguing. But one game that I really have my eyes on is the Vikings and Bills. And this one could be in for an upset for the Buffalo Bills. And now I know last weekend was the big one where the Jets took down the Bills. But this one, I really do actually have confidence because you have the Vikings who they're 7-1 at this point because they did have a bye a couple weeks ago, and they're facing the Buffalo Bills who are 6-2 at this point. So it's a matchup of two of the top 5 teams in the NFL. But the one thing here is that Josh Allen is dealing with an arm problem, with an elbow problem after that got hurt this last weekend against the Jets. And there's talk that it's an MCL injury, possibly a little bit of not that they maybe have to have Tommy John, but that's not for certain. But that's one of those games on the board because the Vikings are rolling. Kirk Cousins is quietly sneaking into the MVP conversation. And obviously you have a top 3 wide receiver in Justin Jefferson. You have Dalvin Cook. And then obviously you just traded for TJ Hawkinson. So they're stacked. And if the Buffalo Bills have a less than 100%, if he's less than 80%, if you have a dinged up Josh Allen, this could be another recipe for the Bills to take another hit here. So this is one that I like the Vikings in this one. The Vikings are they're the plus 160 underdog to the Buffalo Bills. It's only a 3.5 point spread. So it's not quite a pick 'em, but it's right in that territory. So I'm going to take the Vikings and the over on this game. And if you put down a $20 bet just on that, you could come away with a cool $92 just putting down $20. And that's just with that. If you want to throw in a prop bet there with a Justin Jefferson touchdown or a TJ Hawkinson, actually probably the good money would be on a TJ Hawkinson one because Jefferson's probably like a minus 110 to get a touchdown in this one. But yeah, if you probably put one on like on a TJ Hawkinson, I would say he's probably like a plus 180. Yeah, because those odds haven't come out yet, but I would probably put him in the plus 180 category. So you'd probably be looking at plus your odds of probably plus 600 or so, roughly in that neighborhood. So if my math is correct, looking at 160 that you'd be coming away with. So you could have a pretty nice weekend if you just put a little bit of cash on the Vikings to upset the Buffalo Bills and take the over. So thank me later if you take that one, but we'll see how that one goes. But I'm really intrigued by that one. And like I said, you could also look at the Seahawks and Buccaneers game. The Seahawks, who are leading the NFC West, are playing the Tom Brady-led Buccaneers, who finally got back on track last weekend. So that's an intriguing game to look into there. And then you have a few other ones here where you have the Cowboys and Packers, an interesting one to bet on, Rams and Cardinals. Then you have the Chargers and the Niners. So there are some decent games here on the slate that you can bet on. And unlike last weekend where it was just kind of a not the best weekend to bet, but there were a few. But hey, if you were one of those diehard Jets fans that chose the Jets to beat the Buffalo Bills, then good on you. And you probably came away with a decent amount of cash. And then finally, we will look at our fantasy football segment. And this week, it's going to be the fantasy fill-in section because there are some injuries that have occurred here over the last couple weeks here. So if you're in that situation where you're dealing with some buys or you're dealing with some banged up quarterbacks, some banged up situations here. So if Josh Allen gets ruled out, and because I know Jared Goff has kind of cooled off a little bit here going down the stretch. But again, that would be somebody to look into as far as in Jared Goff. Or you could look at Marcus Mariota as well, they both have had their moments here because, again, with Jared Goff, this is a guy that to start the season, he had Amon-Ra St. Brown, DeAndre Swift, even Josh Reynolds was contributing. I know they did trade away TJ Hawkinson, but still, he's a solid quarterback if you need to fill in for a little bit if Josh Allen's out with an injury, or Marcus Mariota for the surprisingly decent Atlanta Falcons, because you can get the rushing ability out of him as well. So that's a decent start if you need to fill in. And hell, maybe even if you're stuck with Aaron Rodgers because you have another injury to somebody, because as good as Aaron Rodgers is, and even though he's a Hall of Famer right now with the situation that he's got going on at wide receiver, that's kind of a bummer. And he hasn't been the same MVP caliber Aaron Rodgers that we're used to because of his supporting cast. And now at wide receiver, if you're struggling to find somebody to replace, maybe if you were relying on a Jahan Dotson or an Aaron Dobbs, or you had Michael Thomas, you have an injury to fill in for. One guy that is out there on waiver wires that he's still available in about 79 or 81%, of Yahoo leagues. And that's going to be Terrence Marshall with the Carolina Panthers, who's had back-to-back weeks of at least 12 and a half points or more in PPR leagues. And he had a 4 for 87-yard game, a 3 for 53, and 1 touchdown game last week against the Bengals. And they get the Atlanta Falcons. So you could get some damage done there because, I mean, DJ Moore has been solid, but still that secondary wide receiver spot is wide open. So Terrence Marshall, the LSU product, could be a useful pickup for you if you need to fill in, or you could go with Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Cleveland, who's had some solid starts there as well, who honestly, he's probably the second best wide receiver that they have on that team outside of Amari Cooper. So he gets you some solid PPR performances there as well if you're looking for that fill in. And if you're looking for that running back fill in because you have some injuries going on, like if you have Ezekiel Elliott that's out right now, or maybe you're still trying to search for a Brees Hall replacement. The market's a little bit thinner, but if you had somebody that ended up dropping maybe an Antonio Gibson in your league or Naheem Hines now that he's traded, you could go and pick up one of those guys. And if I had to take one, I actually would go with Antonio Gibson over this stretch because he's had a couple back-to-back. Well, he's had a 3-game stretch here where he's had some solid production where he's caught some footballs. He went for last week, he had 36 rushing yards, 2 catches for 11 yards, and 68 return yards. And then the game before, he had 19 yards rushing, but the big one was the 7 receptions for 58 yards and 1 touchdown. So he's had an impact here. So Antonio Gibson is a guy that if somebody's dropped him in your league, you can go out and pick up. And then one guy to look in to fill in if maybe Aaron Jones might be out, it's going to be AJ Dillon, who would pick up a lot of that workload, who's had an underperformed year right now in Green Bay. But those are some options to look at if you can either pick them up or maybe try to target them in a trade. Obviously, on the lower level, we're not talking about some of the high-end talent to kind of go look out there. But it'll be interesting to see what you can get for one of these days or one of these players. So we'll see how this all goes here for you this weekend in fantasy. And again, those are just a few guys to look at as far as for some pickups. Just remember to scour your waiver wires for some fantasy fill-ins this week. All right, that will wrap things up for this week's episode of New England Sports Weekly. And as always, remember every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we do the live stream right here on YouTube. And remember, you can hit the like and subscribe button as well, or you can hit the bell for any notifications as well that we send out. And of course, if you can't make it to the live stream, don't fear. You can always download the podcast on SoundCloud or Spotify. Just search New England Sports Weekly and it'll pop up right there for you. And you can subscribe and like those and like the podcast there as well. And of course, if you have any questions, there's always the live chat, which is always open during the show. And then, of course, you can always send any questions over to the Twitter account for the show at NE Sports Weekly. Or you can look up the Instagram account, NE Sports WK, and send any questions there as well. Or you can send them right to my personal at Sean_Met28. And it's the same for Twitter and for Instagram as well. Send me any questions there as well. And I'll be happy to discuss them over the show for you. And love the feedback. So always remember to like and subscribe to any of those accounts as well. And next week, we will look to break down that Jets game and continue to talk about improvements that they have to make for the second half of the season. And of course, we will continue to monitor everything going on with the Boston Bruins and the Boston Celtics. And of course, if anything happens as far as any free agency signings in Major League Baseball, which, I mean, usually those get dragged out until after Christmas now into the new year. But if anything happens in the free agency pool, we will let you know. And of course, anything else out there that's relevant to the Boston sports scene, we will let you know. All right, we will see you next week, everybody.